Like, would it help if you put that? Or no, this? Yeah.
Oh,
just
maybe.
you have to hold it. It stay.
So my suggestion is kind of the same as how we did for the hand digit wrist. I would just move this thing around instead of trying to move this guy around. It's easier. So you're still going to shield, and you still ask about pregnancy, and then at least for this one, you're going to have them make sure that they don't have anything. Wristwatch or whatever. If they have sleeves like this, I'd ask my patient to take this off. Or if they can really roll this up nice above the elbow, this would be fine. But fabric, if it's bunched up like this, this will show up right into the joint. So you usually just want to get them to take off their jacket. All right, so the first one I'm going to have you do is your AP. So I want you to stick your arm out nice and straight. So the positioning for this central ray is just midpoint of your forearm. So basically right in the middle, right between your two joints. And I am just gonna collimate in a little. So how can you tell where the hell the elbow joint is? Everyone's got a wrinkly spot, basically. Everyone's got a little wrinkle, and that's pretty much where your elbow joint is. And that's usually where I have the top of my light. I have it above that. And then you've got it below the wrist. You have to have at least the proximal row of carpals. So you just want your light below the wrist. The other thing he has to do is you really have to get down and make sure everything is on the same plane. So the other thing that happens when you do the AP, a lot of people will keep their hand like this. So you want to make sure their hand is straight up, that he doesn't start to go like that. Make sure their palm is nice and straight. And you're going to mark it thumb side. So this is just your AP. Both joints right in the mid forearm, right between both joints. Okay? And then everything should be up on the same plane. If he could not get down, what you could do is, you can relax, Jim. Yeah, this is not like the greatest thing ever. Typically, your bed will come up nice and high, and then it just kind of raises everything for you. Ours doesn't. So if you need them to be on the same plane, you have to raise up your IR. And this is really only if the patient can't do it.
Would you have to change your...
Then, yeah, you could change it to a little bit higher. You're still at, you'd want to still be at 40. But yeah, since this is off, you'll estimate a little bit.
What do we start off with?
40.
40.
Yeah. Pretty much all extremities are 40.
So do you collimate an inch past each joint? How would
Same. Yep. About 1.5 inches past each joint.
1.5 inches past.
Yep. So you want a little light above your little elbow crease here. And then you've got light below the wrist. And no rotation or anything out or in. Just nice and flat.
And 1 inch on the sides?
Sure.
Sure?
Sure.
Should it be closer or?
No, inch is good. Yeah, inch is good.
Is there light on the...
There you go. There's light on the outside here.
And? Oh, it's just on the outside, you're saying?
Yeah, so I've got light basically on all 4 sides.
About 1 inch.
Yeah, so a little bit of light just on the outside here. I don't want to be too close to the skin where I'm like that. It's very similar to like you're doing your hand and wrist. You have light on all the way on the outsides. Okay, so now we did our AP. We're just going to go to our lateral. What I want you to do is kind of make a 90-degree angle for me, and you have to ask them to give you a thumbs up. So in order to get your wrist lateral as well, make sure they're giving you a thumbs up. Okay. So I'm just going to switch this, kind of give me a little more room. And the reason why I don't like these is because it's going to tilt our IR, so. You're able-bodied. Alright, so make sure he is at his 90-degree angle. He's down, everything is on the same plane. And then same thing, we have light back behind the elbow here. So you should have light behind his little nub, essentially. You want it back behind his arm, and then you've got light below the wrist. So you still have to get both joints. And then you're marking. So 90-degree angle, mid-forearm.
Does that go down too?
Oh, yeah, this goes down. Yeah.
Does he have to do a thumbs up?
Does.
Okay.
Yeah, because he can't keep, why can't he keep his hand down?
And then it's rotate.
It's
Yeah, then you get it like a PA wrist instead of everything lateral. Yeah. So thumbs up. He's got his 90-degree angle here. We're about mid-forearm, and I've got both joints. There's no breathing, which is nice for this. And that's it. Those are your two for the forearm. Pretty easy. Any questions on that? Okay, so now what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to switch to my 10x12, smaller body part. And what I want you to do is the same thing again. Go ahead and just put your arm out. And then I'm just moving it to his elbow joint. That's where the centering is,
So
essentially.
like mid-elbow joint?
Yep, mid-elbow joint. And what they want is like 2.5 inches of light above and below the elbow joint. So, same thing, look for your person's crease. Everyone's got their wrinkle.
You'd be like, make a crease, and, well, they're probably going to be injured anyway.
Well,
You want to be like, oh.
yeah, if they can't, I mean, you'll know where it's bending. And that's exactly where the elbow joint
Which
is.
one is that?
So this is just your AP elbow.
What did you say about the light 2.5 inches above and below?
Exactly. And then like an inch on both sides. So a little bit of light on both sides. You can get your marker in. About 2.5 inches above and below the joint. So I'm just right through the elbow joint. And same thing as like your AP forearm. Just make sure they're not doing that or rotating out any. You want it to be a true AP. And then you can see everything's on the same plane. So what you don't want is if he were to be up just a little bit like this, you want everything nice and flat. Okay, so from here, don't mess with your collimation and just ask them to pronate their hand. Perfect. That's your medial oblique.
So he was like, that was in here.
Yep,
Medial
so you turn his
oblique.
hand, boop, in. Medial or internal.
It's easy enough.
Yeah, so you don't mess with anything. You just
You don't have to call me.
keep it the same.
Just keep it.
Mhm. So then go ahead and place your hand back up for me. And then what I'm going to have you do, so this one kind of requires them to use their full body. To just have them do this will not get your medial epicondyle 45 degrees. That's what we're trying to do. So what you want to do is have him lean from his shoulder, and he's going to lean out. Same thing with his wrist and everything. So this is your external. We're going to move it to kind of, you see how he's angled? I'm just moving everything to him.
Okay.
So keep going. It sucks.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh my god.
That's your external. So you're asking them to really move their shoulder.
What kind of
Okay.
rotation is that? Is that
External.
That's lateral.
You can relax.
But
If
what
you've
they
got-
have, like, something
Alright,
broken
well-
and fractured and they can't do
Well, I was
that?
gonna
Is
say
that
that or
oblique?
arthritis
You
or
will learn
something.
that out at clinicals, and what you end up doing is you throw this
Angle.
into an angle.
Mm.
So they stay AP, and you throw an angle on it, so you're pointing it basically out this way. It would be something like, and this actually won't do it, so I'm not going to do it for you. Yep, you would bring this out and throw it that way. This would go to 45.
Without having them do it extra.
Exactly.
That's easy.
You will do that 100 times.
Where
Because
would
most
you aim
people
the
can't.
CR then? Would it just go?
Still at the joint.
It would be mid-joint, but then when you aim it, it would be out?
Yeah, you would be like out here, and you'd still go through the joint space. And it just throws the, it like distorts it,
Okay.
but it throws the radius out.
How does the shoulder have to be for the external? Like they have to be.
So it's still all on the same plane, but he's allowed to rotate it. He's allowed to rotate it out like this, but you still want everything on the same plane. And you just,
Still to that joint.
yeah. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So from there, then I'll ask you to go ahead and do your. Yep. Yeah. If you wanted to, I'll say it in a second. Actually.
This is the lateral.
So you are basically centered, same thing, right onto your elbow joint, right onto the distal end of your radius. So you have light, it's like 1 inch on all 4 sides. You should have light in the back, you should have light in the front, and the same thing, they should be giving you a thumbs up. And he should come forward, so he's at a 90 degree. Yeah. So you want this doesn't have to be perfect every time, but when they're able to do it, make them do it.
Not literally a thumbs up, just thumb.
Thumb up. But typically,
Can we
I
do
would,
that?
yeah, that's it.
Make a thumbs up.
I always ask my patients, give me a thumbs up.
So
If you wanted to, what you could do to make it easier on yourself, we're already here for our forearm, our lateral forearm. You could keep him here and just go straight into your lateral elbow.
And then do everything else.
And then do everything else. Yeah. You would just cone it down. Okay?
where would you center it?
So it's basically right on the joint back here. It's right on the back of your radius, essentially.
Sorry, Sean, I moved it because she couldn't see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know I keep leaning.
Where you calling me?
So it's 1 inch on all sides. So you have, if you can see here, you have a little bit of light in the front of his elbow. You have a little light here, and in the back, and on the back of your forearm as well. So you want light everywhere, essentially, on the elbow. So, and then you can put this, usually you don't try to fit it in on the front. Try to fit it in the back somewhere. So if you can fit it in here, that's perfectly fine. Most people just try to do it kind of back here by the olecranon. And that's it for the elbow. So for AP, medial, lateral, and then your actual lateral projection.
Looks like pretty cool dance.
Right. Okay, so now what I want you to do is go ahead and stand up. And you're going to place your back against the board. So we typically always do our humerus upright, unless it's a trauma.
Which one are you using?
So this is going to be our AP lateral humerus. And this will be at a 40-inch SME. Make sure, now that we're going back to our bucky here, we have to be detented. So check that every single time, or else, because if you're pulling it out, now you're not centered onto your IR. Okay, so you've got to be detented like we were with our chest and abdomen. And we're going to pull this into 40. I'm just going to show you the left since that's on the outside. So you have to have, it's very similar to the chest, you have to have 1.5 inches above the shoulder, the IR, okay? Go ahead ahead and take a little step over. Good. And then you're gonna have to shield. And what I want you to do is just place your hand out for me. Perfect. So this is just midpoint of the humerus. So you basically try to figure out, this is probably his shoulder joint up here. You have to figure out what is the midpoint of that. Don't be too close to the elbow, and you don't want to be too up high towards the shoulder. So that's what, it takes a little bit of trial and error to kind of figure it out. So you just kind of want to be right in the middle of these two joints. And I'm just going to make sure to remember to be lined up to your IR. Okay, so I have a lot under the elbow, and I'm pretty close up here on the shoulder, so I'm just gonna collimate just a little bit, so I don't get like a humerus and elbow and forearm all in one. This would, if this was a necklace or something, you'd ask him to take it off, move it. So you want a little bit of light. You're going to have a little bit of light underneath the arm. You're going to have light above the shoulder and on the outside of the arm. And then you're just going to mark it. And they have to hold their breath for this one. So you'll ask them to stop breathing. And it's just a suspended respiration. So you just say, don't breathe, don't move. And you go. So I don't know if I'm making it look easy, but it is hard to figure out between the two joints. And the best way to make sure is just make sure you're not clipping off your elbow. Okay, so that's typically what most people do, is they end up accidentally clipping off the elbow. Okay, so you have your AP, and then what I want you to do is kind of put your hand on your hip like this. And now we're going to go into our lateral. So this looks like a nice lateral elbow. You technically don't want them back. You want everything on the same plane. So just make sure they're not real far back. So because his arm and everything came up, I'm just going to move my light up. I'm still mid-humerus. So because I moved this, I have to move my bucky up. So you should have light below his nub, his elbow nub, and then you should have light above his shoulder up here and above his arm. And then we're marking it again, and he holds his breath. Yeah. That's it.
You made it seem easy.
It's kind of nice because the first two only have two projections, AP and lateral. It's figuring this one out is usually what screws people up, because they move up, and then you've got to move everything up, and most people end up accidentally being too high. So just make sure you triple check every single time you've got your elbow and you've got your shoulder joint on there. So that's it.
How would you word the collimation for these two? So for the
I would just say include a shoulder and elbow joint. I don't know. What?
Do we just eyeball it?
Yeah, you'll have to eyeball it. You should basically have light below the elbow, light above the shoulder, and not have an insane amount of light like down here below the elbow. It's like you have to have the right amount. Okay. So you guys will see what I mean when you start to position for this. You're like, what?
And then the center was in between the joints.
Right? Yep, it's mid-humerus. And that's what you'll see on the positioning test. It's just center is mid-humerus.
Okay, that one. And then what plate do we use for that one?
So this is going to be, you're going to use it lengthwise. 14 by
14
17.
by 17 lengthwise.
The only one that's the 10 by 12 is the elbow.
Is there anything on this you would clarify or change or?
No, yeah, that looks good.
What about the other two?
The lateral is also suspended breathing. If you want to put on the central ray, include, for the forearm, include elbow and wrist joints. You could put that if you wanted to.
Where?
For the forearm, for both forearms.
For the central ray for lateral?
Or as a note or something for your collimation.
Oh.
Oh, collimate, so.
To have the,
So it's
elbow and wrist.
crosswise, right? Like
What's-
long,
what's
I
the
mean,
note?
short up here and then long on the side for all of them.
Elbow and wrist.
Yeah, so it would technically be considered lengthwise.
Oh, yeah.
So lengthwise, this would be considered crosswise.
Oh,
But it's
okay.
lengthwise for all of them since they're kind of
Lengthwise for all of
a
them.
bit longer, yeah.
Do you want us to use these or we can just do it?
Now, yeah.